And so I think it's been a very good play back and forth to appreciate where we're both coming from.
One of the things that I'm a little disturbed about in the conversation is this sort of not one size fits all, that we do things different in LA. I understand what you're saying, but it seems to me that we do need to have comparable global measurement, and we do with
Absolutely.
and we
Absolutely.
need
Absolutely.
to come up with some North Stars that
Yep.
my favorite definition of sustainability is turning responsibility into opportunity, and we need to find sort of common themes among this. Otherwise, it almost, the way we're talking about it here, it almost sounds that doing sustainability is harder than making money. It's a much more complicated process, and that is in some sense very sobering in a way, because if you make it about everything, and if you say it doesn't work the same way here as it does there and it does there, then you sort of lose your way in a way. Whereas making a profit seems, that imposes a certain sort of discipline. And for us to get where we need to go, we have to bring the same rigor, the same consistency, the same comparability to sustainability efforts as we do to making profit.
Oh, I agree. I agree completely. And I'm not saying if we have local flexibility or regional flexibility, we don't have North Stars, a framework. I mean, we need execution flexibility is probably a better descriptor. I mean, our North Star in our community work is focused on youth, kids, skills development, access. We have a program called Youth Spark. That's a non-negotiable. That's a global program. How that is implemented in India is likely different than the way it's implemented in Germany or the UK. I know it is. So that's, I think, the local flexibility, at least I was talking
in the
about.
implementation phase.
Right, and I totally agree. You need to have your goals, and with each of those groups, whether it's individually from an individual territory or globally, we collect the same kind of data.
Yes,
but the organization you might use, or what that day looks like where you are, and how you do that, because you use a landlord, but this over here, they own the building. How you get there is going to look different, but the set goals of, but this is what we're doing, so this is how we're going to tally this up at the end of the day. And I don't think that that's unlike how you run business. How you run different practices, they're not all going to look the same, and then you put industries in there. It's going to look different, but at the end of the day, there's one set of themes, and there's one end goal that you're shooting for. There's just flexibility in the local implementation.
But a P&L is a P&L is a P&L.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to have to press pause for just 1 second so we can take in our poll results. Our first question was, how quickly did it take your companies to start seeing results from their CSR efforts? And 8% of you said that those results were immediate. 27% said within a couple of years. 35% said several years. And almost a full third of you said that there's been no impact on the bottom line yet. So that's an interesting result. I want to ask, you mentioned the sort of North Star. You both were talking about sort of goals and a North Star, sort of knowing where you're headed. One of the questions that came up in the Q&A online here was, what role can external groups, and greenwell.org was mentioned, play in helping companies set those goals and keep their eyes on the concrete progress?
Go ahead.
External stakeholders play a very important and vital role, from customers to business partners, to communities, to investors, to governments. Those are all stakeholders in, I think, any company. And we do a lot of work externally with stakeholders globally. We learn a lot from stakeholders. We need to listen to stakeholders. I work a lot with members of the socially responsible investment community on some of our working responsibly issues, from human rights to governance to supply chain management. And I think it's important that companies engage with investors. I'm surprised, talking to investors, of how some companies won't engage with them, don't return phone calls, don't really want to have a conversation. I think that is vitally important. So I think external stakeholder engagement with a wide array of stakeholders that are relevant to your business is absolutely a critical part of this work.
Can any of you think of a good external organization that's really good at helping companies keep their eyes on the ball in these domains?
Well, I mean, one of the organizations we work with a lot is called BSR, Business for Social Responsibility, in San Francisco. It's sort of a trade association for those of us who do this work. Membership organization. They also do consulting stuff, and they have conferences. I think all of us could spend our entire
was gonna
week
say, at a
going to conferences
right.
on CSR, sustainability, or citizenship. So there's no lack of opportunities to engage. I think it really depends, do companies choose to engage in a meaningful way?
Well, and I think it's how you engage, too, with these external stakeholder groups, because there has to be an understanding that we come from different backgrounds. Right. And so whether you're dealing with a nonprofit, whether it's a consulting firm, right. whether it's somebody who's going at you pretty tough, you have to be able to say, I don't get it. When we ended up in this whole education realm, we're not educators. We don't know how the education system works, and yet here we're trying to get into schools. You have to sit down and actually appreciate where they're coming from, and I think that takes breaking down a lot of silos.
And listening.
And right, and having people, though, who come now to you understanding your business. I think before there was a lot of external groups that would just send random notes and just be upset about different things and not come with totally appreciating where companies are coming from, and I think there's better dialogue now
much
with
better.
Stakeholder management, because people have an appreciation that most companies that are at least active in this are coming to the table and they're trying at least to act responsibly and to learn from where their actions are and figure out then how to best work with those external agencies.
And even the strongest advocates have sort of changed their view on business, I think. Greenpeace will partner. They're working with PepsiCo on creating refrigeration that has little climate impact. Oxfam America has got a whole private sector division now that works with companies that want to know, well, we know our impact on wealth, but what's our impact on poverty? And so this part of the organization beats you up, but part of the organization tries to actually be your partner.
Absolutely.
And they've worked with a lot of very big firms in terms of, developing this concept of a poverty footprint. And, what are and the companies are open, and Oxfam is open to that. So I think, there's a lot more common ground. I like to call it the sweet spot. There are these intersections now between business and the interests of society.
And even the businesses you might not expect. And ExxonMobil has even felt the need to make sure that it's seen to be making investments in certain environmental quality in some places and labor rights in others. So even companies that are considered the most hardened bastions of profit before all else have started to move this direction as well. So
well, because we all realize that, what good is having a beautiful house if there's no good planet to put it on? And as the pressures become greater on the earth, there is more common ground. You can't do business in a society that's failing.
Right.
And so there's almost becomes a logical reason for companies to engage on a very broad basis, and vice versa.
Let me jump in with another question from our viewers online. Now, I think it's an interesting one. We talk about a lot of these big, complicated problems that nobody alone can solve, not NGOs, not business. And in particular, a lot of people are worried that governments are looking very paralyzed these days. And here in the United States, that's certainly been a very big issue. But at the local and state level, there's often more flexible governments with a little bit more nimble ability to partner with other stakeholders in the city or in the community, including business, to get things done. And so there's a question here of are there any metro areas or states in the United States that have been particularly good models of this? One thinks of sort of